Okay guys, I gotta be honest, the Ranger is not what I had planned on working on today. I was gonna do some work on it during the winter time and I just never got around to it. I don't really drive the truck a lot. I would, but I don't think it runs that great, so I end up using it just to move trailers around in the yard. But let me fire it up and show you what it sounds like and tell you what I think is the problem and then what I discovered. So you can see the engine sputters, but here in a few minutes it's going to start making this noise, and I started thinking it's got to be the water pump. So it was making this noise like I was thinking the water pump sounds like it's getting ready to go out. I thought, well, maybe I need to go ahead and just get a water pump and replace it. Then I thought, well, let's check the radiator and see how much fluid is in it. And when I pulled this cap off, it was this black sludge was just, it's still in there. Like, the whole thing is just full of black sludge. I have to be honest, what's on the end of my nose, man? Good gravy. I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before in my life. So I started feeling the hoses, and there's not really any water in the hoses, and they're starting to crack, so they probably need to be replaced. But this thing definitely needs to be flushed out, and maybe a whole radiator replaced. I don't know what that is or where that's come from. Of course, I haven't driven the truck very much since I've gotten it, so it's time to flush out the radiator and see what we've got. I'm gonna spray these clamps down because they're rusty and they have not been messed with in a long time. This upper one's obviously been replaced, but well, I just lubricated the whole frame rail up there because my aim was so bad. I think I'm gonna take the bottom hose off the radiator off first and just run some water through it and see what comes out before I start taking anything else out. I'm gonna have to end up running water all the way through that water pump. I'm hoping that's whatever that is, wherever that sludge has come from, it's not too far in there. I'm not even sure. God, there might not be anything in it at all. There's something coming out. But I tell you what, it looks like what you'd have run out of your septic line, more so than the bottom of the radiator. I should have checked this. When I got the truck, I should have basically gone through all that. I really didn't. Okay, so I got the the bottom hose off, and looks like water, some coolant, not a ton, and a lot of sludge. But man, I'll tell you what, there wasn't very much in there. Golly, it's a wonder this thing didn't just burn up. I'm gonna bring the hose over here and run water through it, see if I can get this thing to flush out. I mean, what first came out was some nasty looking stuff. Okay, so what I did so far is I took the bottom radiator hose off, ran some water through it, put it back on. I didn't tighten it up, and the drain plug is over on this side on the bottom. I undid it, ran water through it, Now I've closed that back off, and I took the upper radiator hose off. I'm gonna fill it all the way up and see what comes out of this top. I mean, the radiator may leak because, quite frankly, it didn't have very much coolant or water in it at all. So I'm gonna run some water in and see what that does. All right, it's coming out the top, and it's coming out nice and black. So I suppose that's a good thing. It needs to clear all that out, but I don't know if just running water through is going to clear out that sludge. What do you think the likelihood that the thermostat works? I say probably no. All right, let me go shut that water off. I mean, I suppose I could look and see what a new radiator costs, but if I can get this one drained and cleaned out, I mean, maybe it'll be okay. But boy, I've never seen anything like that before. When I squeeze this hose, look how black. Okay, I think I'm gonna drain it again and just run clean water through it again, since all the hoses, I didn't clamp any of them down. So let's just see if we can just keep cleaning it out. It's settling down as far as running goes. It doesn't have that gallop in it, so I'm thinking that water pump had to be working really, really hard. Okay, I pulled the lower radiator hose out, and of course a lot of dark water came out. I pulled the upper radiator hose. It was a little more brown, not black. When I stick my finger in there now, I don't feel all that sludge, so it is cleaning it out. I think I'm gonna go through the same process again, put all the hoses on it, and then fill it back up, run it, and then drain it again, and just keep doing that, and see if I can get this thing cleaned out. Definitely running better. Still got a little bit of that gallop. That could be the water pump still. So based on what I'm hearing, I think it's the water pump. I mean, it probably needs to be replaced. I need to check that thermostat anyway. So I'm gonna start taking the radiator out. The hoses are already disconnected. It's pretty much drained at this point. So take the radiator out, get it out of the way. So I get the hoses out of the way, loosen the belts, so I can get to the water pump and get a replacement for it. Okay, so where I am so far, this truck is easier than most because you don't have a power steering belt and pump, and you don't have air conditioning. So it's really loosen this bolt to tilt this down to take the belt off. Same thing here, loosen this bolt to shift this down to take the other belt off. Now, what I should have done before I did that is there's a fan that's on here with 4 bolts. I should have loosened those before I took the belt off because it would hold it. So I had to hold it with one hand and loosen them with the other, which was a little harder. It would have been easier if I just left the belt on. So if you're gonna do that, leave the belt on and then just at least loosen them up, then take the belts off. Take these 4 bolts off and the fan comes right off. That comes off. And there's your water pump. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to take this cover off to get to all that. So I'll have to look and see. Okay, to get to this bolt for the water pump, you have to take the timing cover off, or at least slide it over. And so there's 4 bolts and a screw to do that, and you have to take the thermostat housing off first to get to that final bolt. I mean, I probably should think about changing this timing belt while I'm in here, but the truck only has 56,000 miles on it, so I don't think I'm going to fiddle with that right now. It's not that hard to get to if I want to change it later, but I'm going to stick with changing this water pump, and golly, there's a lot of crud in there. So I'm gonna try to clean out as much of that as I can after I take that water pump off. So I need to take off this lower hose here, and I need to take off this hose here, and then that'll allow me to get to the 3 bolts that hold the water pump on. All right, the water pump's out. It doesn't, when I spin it, it doesn't sound too bad. It sounds like the bearings might be a little dry in it. So it's out anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and get a replacement for it, and the upper and lower hose, and put it back together. All right, after picking up the parts yesterday, I'm gonna go ahead and work on this water pump. I'm going to reuse these clamps, kind of like these old screw squeeze clamps, but I'm gonna shoot them with some, not WD-40, but some PV Blaster to get them lubricated up. And I'll take them off and put them on the new hoses, clean all the gaskets off of everything, clean all the surfaces, so that's ready to go, so I can start the installation of all of it. I'm also going to do an oil change on the truck, because I don't know when the last time it was done, and the oil looks a little dark, a lot dark, and overfilled. So it's probably going to be happier with some new oil and the right amount of oil. So that's going to be on the agenda today as well. So this clamp's getting a little twisted, but I'll take it all the way off, lubricate it up. I love how on these they put a staple through or something to hold it in place. That's real interesting. Never seen that before. Obviously, with the low miles that this truck has, it's the original hoses and clamps. So take that. And let me wind it back. I'm gonna do all these real quick. Try not to get junk on the new hoses. Love the smell of PV Blaster, for sure, which I just said I wasn't gonna do, and then I just did. Oh, mercy. Okay, let that soak a little bit. Go ahead and run all those back and move them over to the new hoses. Okay, I have the gasket all cleaned off of the block. So now I'm gonna use some gasket maker, coat the water pump so I can stick the gasket on there. Then I'll put some on the other side of it and go ahead and bolt it in. I started draining the oil, and it has a little bit of a gas smell to it, which has got me a little concerned. It would explain why the oil level was a little high. Must have gas seeping through a bad ring or something, or there's lots of reasons that could cause that. So I have to investigate that at some point. But for right now, I want to get all the water pump and the thermostat housing and all that stuff back in and get it all bolted up together and get some coolant in it. So I'll get this gasket on and then we'll bolt it in. Just put a little along here and smear it around. Probably should put that little tip on there. The good thing about this is it allows you to stick the gasket on there, and that way you're not wrestling around with it when you're trying to bolt it all in. Plus it helps seal everything. All right, I'll start hand threading these. And I put some anti-seize on them as well. get it started first. There it goes. If this was a 6-cylinder, it would have a little bit bigger of a water pump on it, but this one, being the smaller 4-cylinder, really only has, sorry about that, really only has 3 bolts holding it in. So I'm just going to try to tighten them down evenly. And honestly, they weren't really bolted on there that tight. You'd think they'd be really cranked down, but they're not. That leaves doesn't squeeze all the gasket out that way. So that should be good to go. I'm actually going to reverse the order. I'm going to put this cover back on, and that will still allow me to get the thermostat housing put in place. Okay, so I have the water pump and the thermostat housing all put in, the timing belt cover put back on. Now I'm going to hook all the hoses up, put the fan on, put the radiator back in, finish changing the oil, put all the coolant in, and hopefully it won't leak. Alright, okay, so I buttoned everything up and I fired it up, and it doesn't have that little mist that it had before. I'm letting the coolant run into it, and so far I don't have any leaks, which is good. The little petcock at the bottom, the little drain valve was leaking a little bit, and I tightened it up and it's good to go. I'm kind of watching the water pump and the thermostat housing. But I don't think it's leaking, and it sounds a lot better than it did before. So I'm gonna have to keep tabs on if there's a valve or something that's not closing, or if the ring is bad and it's allowing gas to seep through into the oil. So I'll keep checking that. Shouldn't smell like gas now, but the truck's running a lot better. Alright, I decided to take the Ranger, make a little run to the dump. Hopefully it's going to make it there and back, but I don't know, we'll wait and see. It seems to be running fine, but boy, she's a dog. That little 2.0 4-cylinder is not a banger by any means, but that's going to be it for this episode, and I'll catch you on the next one.